Right, good afternoon, everybody. How was your lunch breaks? Excellent. I hope you guys at home enjoyed yours as well as we did here. Welcome to the afternoon session. Our information and support provision at Retina UK means a huge amount to all of us, and more so when we hear how much of an impact it has on people affected by sight loss, and how much of an impact it has on you, our professional community, as well. So to tell you more about how you impact us and how we can provide support to you and your community, we have a great session this afternoon headed up by Paula McGrath, our Director of Development. Paula.
Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? That's better, that's me. So welcome to the session, everybody. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you all this afternoon about the services provided by Retina UK, how these can help you in your roles and also those you support. So the plan for this session is I'm going to give you an overview of our services. We'll then take a few moments, I'll go through each of the specific services. Please don't worry about taking too many notes, we'll share information with you afterwards. And then I'm delighted this afternoon that we'll be joined by Vivini, Sean and Denise, who are going to talk to us about their experiences of either being involved by the way of a volunteer in our services or because they've accessed Retina UK services. There will be time for questions at the end, so as we've done earlier in the day, if you're in the room, please raise your hand, and if you're at home, please ask questions using the Q&A. So today we're joined by ECLOs, rehabilitation officers, teachers, social workers, and many other professions. I'm very aware that all of you have one thing in common, and that is the drive to do the very best you can for those affected by inherited sight loss conditions. No doubt something else you all have in common is pressure of workload. Too little time to spend with those that you support in your professional role. You may not have the time to lend a listening ear. You may not have all the information that you would like to be able to answer the many questions that I'm sure you're asked. After all, these are relatively rare conditions, and you all have expertise in your own area. This is where we can help. Here at Retina UK, we have a small information support team. Our staff team is made up of Matt, Denise, and Mark. But this small staff team is ably supported by a committed group of 50 information and support volunteers. We simply couldn't do what we do without them. Each and every one of them has lived experience of inherited sight loss and a willingness and desire to share their experiences to make a difference with others. They're able to provide information from the perspective of somebody who genuinely knows what it is like to live with an inherited sight loss condition. They've been there, they get it, they genuinely understand. There is no need to explain. And this support can be invaluable. So how can we help? We can offer practical support. This may be condition-specific, questions around eye health, services, benefits advice. Perhaps people are experiencing visual hallucinations and want more information on this. They might have questions about technology or the latest research. People might be looking for emotional support. We've heard a lot about this earlier today. They might need a listening ear, just someone to talk to. Or actually they could benefit from structured wellbeing support and our new Discover Wellbeing resource. And then there's the opportunity to make connections, and this cannot be overemphasized. The sense of belonging to a like-minded community, the opportunity to talk to others who really do understand. And I'd just like to mention at this point that all of our services are free to access, and to remind you that they're open to you. as professionals who support, as well as those living with these conditions, their families, and perhaps colleagues and others who have an interest in our work. If somebody's got a question about inherited sight loss, we're happy to speak to them. So how do we know that we're actually making a difference? We're very proud of our satisfaction levels for our information and support services at Retina UK. In our 2022 survey, 83% of respondents who had accessed our services rated them as excellent or good. We know that we can reduce loneliness, isolation, and depression. 52% of those who have not engaged with Retina UK have experienced loneliness. This is compared to 31% of those who have. 49% of those who have not engaged have experienced isolation, compared with 36% who have. And 47% of those who have not engaged have experienced depression, compared with 37% who have. You can trust us to make a difference. We're also a top source of research information. 70% of our survey respondents cite us as their top source, and second is their ophthalmologist at just 27%. So people are coming to us with the information that they need around research activity. I'd now like to take a few moments just to talk you through some of the key services and how you can access them. So I'll start with our website. If you haven't seen it, we have a website, and that's retinauk.org.uk, and there is a wealth of information on there. As Tina mentioned earlier in the day, we do have a new website coming in 2023, which is a very exciting project for us now to be working on, as well as a little daunting. And we'll be working extremely hard to ensure that that is fully accessible to all those who come to the site. There's a button on the website to sign up to our newsletter, and I'd encourage you as professionals and those you support to do that. By signing up to us, you'll receive monthly e-newsletters. We've got a specific bulletin for health and social care professionals and another for community members. You'll also receive Look Forward, our regular magazine, and just to stress that you can request whichever format works best for you. So we're very aware of the need to produce content in audio format, as well as Word documents and PDFs, Braille, whatever people require. Those who've used our newsletters and website have told us, well, 96% of people told us they were satisfied with that. So that's a good percentage to be going into a new website build. Let's hope we can make it 100% when we get to the new one. Our helpline, again, as with all of our information support services, manned by our amazing volunteers. As I said earlier, they all have their own experience of inherited sight loss. So that's available on telephone or via email. The phone lines are open from 9:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. Monday to Friday, and of course people can email at any point. Do please get in touch if you have a question. We're very happy to support you. And the helpline, we've just learned the latest survey, we get a 92% satisfaction rating for that. Now, our talk and support service really is complementary to the helpline, and that is a service that enables us to have a continued conversation with someone. It might be that their initial point of contact with us is actually through the helpline, and then we identify that they would benefit from having a chat on a more regular basis with one of our trained volunteers. It's telephone support, really for as long as it's welcomed. Might be a telephone call once every couple of weeks or a month, and wherever we can, we will try and match the client with a volunteer with shared experience. So it might be, for example, that we have a new mum who's received a diagnosis and would like to speak to somebody else who's been in that position. Maybe somebody who's younger, perhaps off to university or going into a particular work role, that they'd like to speak to somebody again who has similar experiences, or it could be that they've got experiences around a specific condition. So we will match where we feel able to. Our local peer support groups were traditionally face-to-face groups, but as with many services for many organisations, we needed to respond really quickly in the pandemic to ensure that we would aid there and continue to be there for our community to offer the support that they probably needed more than ever. So a number of our local peer support groups moved online. And at the moment, we're continuing with a mix of online meetings and face-to-face, dependent on what a particular group would prefer to do. That blend works really well because we have had people that have attended meetings initially online who hadn't got the confidence to come to a face-to-face meeting, but having attended and met others, they've now then formed some relationships and built the confidence to come along in person, which is always great to see. We've currently got 15 active groups. I won't run through them all. The details are on the website. It's an area of development for the organisation at the moment. We know it makes a big difference, so we are rolling that out to more areas of the country. It's just really an opportunity for others to meet people in their local area. Some groups are quite structured and have speakers. Some groups might just go to the pub and have a chat, but it is that opportunity to connect with others with similar experiences, removing the need for somebody to give too much explanation, but just to feel really secure in the environment that they're in. We've recently launched a new national online group as well, so any areas that aren't covered, people are very welcome to come along to that national group. Webinars, that was another new development for the organisation during the pandemic. I do look back now, I think, crikey, how do we launch so many new things in such difficult times? But the webinars and podcasts have proven so popular that we're going to continue with them. The webinars are generally held monthly. We've covered a range of topics: research, technology, sport, condition specific. They're held on Zoom with the ability for people to join on the phone if they would prefer to, and that's more accessible for them. The recordings of all of the webinars are available online, so even if somebody can't make a meeting at the time, they can watch afterwards, or quite often there's a lot of information to absorb in a short space of time when you attend. People are very welcome to go back, re-watch, share with family and friends if that would be useful. All available through our website. The recordings are on YouTube, or people can access our podcast channel on Anchor FM. And then our events programme. Obviously, you've joined us for an event today. We have our annual conference for our community tomorrow. We also hold information days, and this year they will take place in September. All being well, we're heading to Bristol, Oxford, Manchester and Hull. The details again on our website. Those events are suitable for anybody with an interest in inherited sight loss, be it somebody who's living with a condition or a professional, a family member. So please do have a look at those, and we'd love you to join us. Again, the recordings go online afterwards, so there is time to catch up or to share. Just to mention, with those meetings, we tend to do a blend of research information and information support, the two main pillars of the charity. Unlock Genetics. This was a new resource that we launched off the back of the findings from our 2019 sight loss, where we learned that there was a real lack of understanding and information for our community around genetic testing and counselling. We really wanted to respond to that, and having managed to secure some funding, the output from that was Unlock Genetics. The address for that is retinauk.org.uk/genetics. Do have a look. It's a unique resource for our community. We worked with numerous experts in the field, including Sean, who is going to join our panel in a moment, to ensure that that really is trustworthy, top-notch information. And the purpose of the site really is to give our community the information they need to be able to make informed choices about their future. So it's not our position as a charity to tell people what they need to know. What we want to do is to be able to provide information in a time and place that suits for people to seek out what is useful for them. As with all of our resources, Unlock Genetics, whilst it predominantly is a web resource, is available in hard copy format, audio format, whatever people would prefer. I'm not going to spend much time talking about Discover Wellbeing because we've had a session on that this morning, other than to say we're super proud of it, and it has been wonderful to hear so much positive feedback for that resource over the lunch break. So I urge you all, hope you don't crash the site, but I urge you all to have a look maybe on your train journey home today or in the very near future. And we'd really welcome feedback on that. And actually that applies to everything we offer at Retina UK. We're continually improving because we're asking for feedback. So please be honest and open with what you share with us, because it's only by you doing that that we can make the very best, biggest difference that we can through continual improvement. And just to stress, as Denise mentioned this morning, there is the opportunity of having a trained volunteer to provide encouragement to individuals as they work through Discover Wellbeing. And then our Facebook support groups. As mentioned earlier, the benefit of being part of a like-minded community, and this is really evident on these groups. We do have moderators, but the moderators generally sit back and just keep a watchful eye on the conversations that are happening, because this really is a safe space for those affected by inherited sight loss to have the conversations they want to have with each other online at a time that suits them. And really it's about offering peer-to-peer mutual support within the community. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the information and support services that we offer. To say there's lots more information on the stands, come and speak to the team, or go and have a look. We'll share more information with you when we communicate with you after the event today, so you can have a look at those resources. So I'm really delighted this afternoon that we're joined by members of our community to come and talk to us about their experience of using the services, so really you can gain some understanding and insight into the impact. So I'd like to invite Bhavini, Sean and Denise to come and join me. Thank you. Sean, could I ask you to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Sean Swearing. I'm a genetic counsellor based at the Oxford Eye Hospital. I know there's been quite a bit of mention about genetic counselling and genetic testing today, but I just thought it might be helpful for me to just summarise what I do, just for those that maybe aren't so familiar. So genetic counselling is the process in which we investigate individuals or their families that are at risk or living with a genetic disorder. So that kind of ranges from providing information about the science, kind of genetic side of things, to providing emotional support through the process of genetic testing, getting the results, and what the implications then are for the wider family.
Thank you. Bhavini, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bhavini McConnor. I live with retinitis pigmentosa. I'm a volunteer and a group facilitator for Retina UK and their ambassador. I work for London Vision as their engagement manager, and I'm also the chair of BAME Vision.
Very busy lady. Denise.
I'm sure I can follow that. I'm Denise, and I'm one of the information and support managers at Retina UK.
Thank you. Bhavini, you've mentioned that you volunteer with us, and I know that in the past you've also used Retina UK's information and support services. I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about how you first came into contact with the charity and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with RP in 1997, so I was just 17. And at the point of diagnosis, I was just told that you'll go blind, there's no cure, there's no treatment, and that was basically it. I could lose my sight in a matter of years, it could be months or weeks, there was just no information, and that news literally turned my whole world upside down. I didn't even know what RP was, I couldn't even say the word retinitis pigmentosa back then, and I'd never come across any blind or partially sighted person. So you can imagine the kind of, for the next kind of 14, almost 15 years, I never knew anything about a sight loss charity, a local society, ECLOs, rehabs, nothing. Nothing was signposted to me. And it was by accident that I was sitting in my eye hospital, and my husband noticed a poster being put up, and he saw the word retinitis pigmentosa on there. He went to go and look at it, and Retina UK were going to be speaking at an event, and we soon booked on. And yeah, 15 years later, I came across the charity, and I registered with them, became a member, and started looking into all the different things they were offering. I attended one of their group meetings in London, and that was literally the first time since my diagnosis I met somebody else with the same eye condition as me. And not only that, someone my age that I could talk to, that could relate to me. I was a mum, and all the kind of struggles I went through, just trial and error, you know, what's working for me, how to do things differently, bringing up my girls. I could talk to somebody else who could relate. So it was by accident that I came across Retina UK almost 15 years later after my diagnosis.
I think it's fantastic that you found the charity, but really, really disappointing to hear that it was by accident. And I think that's something that we can't stress enough today. Please let people know that we exist, because actually don't assume that they do, or that somebody's already had that conversation. Bhavini, you also volunteer facilitator of our London peer support group. Can you tell us a little about that experience, both from your perspective and what happens at the groups and how you see the benefits?
Yeah, so I started volunteering for Retina UK on their helpline, and I became their group facilitator about a couple of years ago. And it has been a tremendous experience. I mean, I took over the group just as COVID occurred. So we started online meetings, and we started ranging from about 20 to 25 people attending, and we had different speakers come along, but we also have time for people just to ask questions, just to sort of say, this is what I'm going through. Can anyone share information about how they're going through it? It could be that they want to just sort of share something new that they've come across. So we have that opportunity to learn something. So some of our group members really love the medical research or the medical side of it. So we try and arrange the speakers. So they're medical range, service provision, it could be technology, anything that the group members want. And we also allow time for people just to connect and network. And, you know, some of the other kind of work that I'm involved with through my, you know, my role at London Vision, when I speak to other people and get them to, you know, I tell them about the group. Some people might be apprehensive, and I said, there's no pressure to even say anything. You can just sit and listen. You can just sit and just take note, and if you feel comfortable in saying something, that's fine. And if you don't, then there's no pressure to. And we've heard great feedback that they love that, you know, they love the speaker side of it, the information side, but also just to relate to other people and just ask questions. This is what I'm struggling with. How do others cope? So just sharing of information, that's been really great.
And I think there's something there about the importance of, with, you know, all of us in our professional roles, have got expertise in specific areas, but we may not have that lived experience. Some of us might, but others may not have that lived experience. And actually, to be able to use the services of Retina UK in a complementary way for the services you provide, hopefully that's an opportunity to enable those connections to happen. Thank you, Bhavini. We will have time for questions for Bhavini at the end. Sean, we were very fortunate to have you as our expert reviewer on our Unlock Genetics website, acknowledging that we don't have all the expertise for that within Retina UK. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your experience of working on the project with us.
Yeah, it was a real privilege for me to kind of work with Retina UK on that. I think, as it's been mentioned a couple of times, it was recognised in that survey back in 2019 that there was a group of people who weren't getting the information about genetic testing and genetic counselling. And we weren't seeing those people because the people who come to us in clinic obviously have reached that point. So it was really important for us to work alongside Retina UK to make sure that we were kind of meeting that unmet kind of need and providing accurate information for people to then make the decision and make an accurate and informed choice about taking genetic testing forward or coming to a genetics clinic.
Thank you. And it's really important to us that we do involve expert reviewers as well as community reviewers in the information resources that we develop. So each of our key projects will identify a group of community reviewers and the professionals, and all of the information we produce will go through a process to ensure that it's had eyes on it, those different perspectives, but really important perspectives on the information that we produce. I wonder whether you could just talk to us about how you use unlocked genetics sort of in your role and how useful that's been.
Yeah, it's been a really helpful resource for us to, I guess, signpost our patients to. The point of diagnosis is quite an overwhelming moment for our patients, and they get a lot of information from the consultants, they get a lot of information from a genetic counsellor if there's a genetic counsellor available. And so having something that they can go away with, whether that be a printed handout that we can provide for them or just direct them to the website, we know that we're sending them away with accurate information that they can look back on when they're not as overwhelmed, or they can share with their family members, that we know that everyone's getting the correct information. So it's been really helpful for us to know that after they leave the clinic, they're still able to access that information if and when they need to.
Thank you. We talked about unlocked genetics, but have you signposted to other services from Retina UK?
Yeah, so as a general rule, any patient that we have that's diagnosed with an inherited sight loss, we would signpost to a number of different charities, including Retina UK. We recognise that there's only so much that we can do at the point of diagnosis. And not only do they need the genetic information, but they also need this other support services that Retina UK provide, including things like this, the events, and just having support from people who have that lived experience. In the clinic, as much experience that we have with working with people with that lived experience, we're living with sight, and so we don't necessarily have that same perspective that some of the support and volunteer that through Retina UK can provide.
And I really like the fact you've brought up, that an appointment can be overwhelming. I'm sure we've all had different appointments in our own lives, where actually afterwards you think, oh, we should ask that, or what about this? And it can all be a bit of a blur, can't it? Particularly when it's difficult information to take in. So the opportunity to be able to go away with something in your hand, or certainly signpost it to a resource to follow up on. Thank you, Sean. Denise, so we're very fortunate to have you leading on our Helpline service. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the types of calls that we receive or emails that we receive, the type of contact that we have through the service.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the service it's easy to lead on when you've got such an amazing team of volunteers behind us. And we've always had a lot of calls across a breadth of subjects. What we've seen in the last 2 years is that there's been a shift. So we've always had calls about daily living things have always been a big thing for us. Everything from somebody's about to buy a new cooker. It's like, what can you suggest for me to future-proof this cooker? Are the things that I should think about and things I should look out for. Technology, mobility, cane training, what tints in glasses, all of those type of areas or queries. We get a lot of questions that are condition specific, wanting to know more about the condition that somebody's living with, what to expect in the future. Research has always been a big area, wanting to know about research. And whilst we've always had callers that need emotional support, we've seen a big increase in that area in the last 2 years. People that really, sometimes they're calling with a very basic question, but when you ask, how are you actually doing day to day? How are you managing with that? It's very clear very quickly that actually what they need is a listening ear. They need somebody to talk to. And then you have people that actually call us in a state of distress, that they've been through something that they're just not handling very well, that it may be taking a dip in their sight, that their sight has deteriorated, or actually at diagnosis. There was one lady that we spoke to quite recently, it was actually a family member, And we do encourage family members, you know, friends and colleagues to call as well. You know, it's not just the person who's living with the condition, but she called us because her husband had been diagnosed with RP. And during the diagnosis, it was a local hospital, so probably an ophthalmologist that didn't come across the condition very often, but was basically told not to have any more children. And they stopped and said, well, what do you mean? And said, do you have children at the moment? And they said, yes, we've got 2. He said, I'm glad about that, because you shouldn't have any more unless you want to watch them go blind. Needless to say, the young lady phoned. The first 10 minutes of the call was actually just her crying. And she said, while she was really, really concerned about her husband and the impact that it was having on him, actually they were planning another baby. And it was extremely distressing to her that the fact that that dream was being taken away, and in such a blunt manner. And as well as being a listening ear that she definitely needed, we were able to talk through, you know, the options available, that actually what she should do was go along and speak to a genetic counsellor that could explain about the condition. They could look at what the chances, the inheritance patterns, the chances of passing on the condition to any future children, and actually what their options are, because there are options, you know, and there are options available, and she needed to be able to go and talk that through with somebody with all the right knowledge and experience. None of that had been discussed at all. The message has just been given and off she went. So that type of thing is a big deal.
And again, it's equipping people with the information and the knowledge that they need to go away and you know, get that, make those informed choices, isn't it? If you don't have the information, then you're not in a position to do that. And as you've just mentioned, we regularly signpost on. So whilst we're asking professionals to signpost to us for support, if it's something that we feel is outside of our remit or our expertise, we've got vast numbers of contacts that we would then signpost people onto, and usually follow up with them as well, just to check that that's working out for them. How do you see the helpline fitting in with the support provided by other professionals and other charities? Because obviously we work in quite a busy sector. There's a number of charities available. How do we fit in there, Denise?
I think the only way that we support the people out there that are living with our conditions is for us as a sector to work together. We have to come together as a sector. It's like, to me, when you do maintenance on a house, you know, you need some jobs, you need a screwdriver, some jobs you need a hammer. If you need a job that requires a hammer, a screwdriver isn't going to do it, and vice versa. You need all of the tools in a toolkit to be able to carry out the jobs you need, and so do people. They need to know about all of us and the support that we can all offer in a different way. And by referring to each other whenever they need it, might not be right now, it may be further down the line, but when they need it, they need to know that the support is there. And by complementing each other, that's what's making a difference.
I think probably worth mentioning at that point, sort of even in our day-to-day activity, we have a lot of involvement with other charities, other visual impairment charities, sector partners. So, for example, when we made the fairly bold decision to develop Discover Wellbeing, we were very mindful of what else is already in existence. You know, we knew there was a need, but we also wanted to ensure that whatever we developed as a charity complemented what else was out there. So there are services, as Denise mentioned earlier, from RNIB, for example. There's no point in us doing exactly what RNIB are doing. So how could we do something that would complement those services? So we work collaboratively, we work in partnership, understanding who is best placed. What we do absolutely recognise is sometimes it needs to be Retina UK, sometimes it needs to be specific to inherited sight loss conditions as opposed to sight loss in general, and I'm sure everybody in the room will appreciate why that's so important. Can we just touch on the talk and support service, Denise, and who might benefit from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for anybody who's feeling maybe a little bit isolated, particularly over the last 2 years, people who just want to build up, maybe need to open up a little bit more, maybe need to build a relationship with somebody on an ongoing basis, somebody that they can open up and trust. Perhaps family, you know, sort of someone who isn't able to open up to their family members in quite the same way, because a lot of people are frightened of upsetting their family if they're, if they're feeling concerned or anxious. They don't want to upset their family members, so they keep it bottled up. Well, it's a safe place, to be able to build a relationship and talk to someone on a regular basis, someone that's got similar experience to them, similar interests to them. It's not only to talk about the sight loss, but it's a way, that a safe place that you can do that. So any of those people would really benefit. I've actually got a quote from somebody actually who very recently wrote into us about some talk and support. I'll just share this with you. The email: when diagnosed with RP, I thought that was me finished, but I feel I can now achieve much more than I ever imagined. I still have a way to go, but you helped me see that there's no weakness in what we got, and that it doesn't define us at all. So thank you again for helping me to change the way of thinking and pulling me out of a dark place. Fate would have it that you were the one that got to speak to me, and you did help and encourage me to step up and take action. Thank you.
That's really
That
lovely.
makes a difference.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, and I guess, Pavini, that this is a similar kind of thing that you hear at your local peer support group.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if they're joining for the first time, because it literally could have been the first time that they're being, be it virtually, in a room with other people that can understand. And especially where they ask me to sort of share my experiences and they can relate, especially if they're also going through cultural issues, like, some of the stigmas attached to disability in different communities. They don't have anyone to speak to or anyone that can understand, especially if sight loss is not in their family. So the chances of increased isolation and mental health, further increases. So those kind of comments, I remember one that joined the virtual session back in February. He's in his 70s and he's been living with RP since he was 32. And he said that I've never ever spoken to anyone, and it was just so good to share and listen to other people that were going through what I had been through, and I just thought it was just me. So most definitely.
Again, to the point that was made earlier, there is no set pathway. This isn't just about a point of diagnosis. Point of diagnosis is a significant impact and is a really important time for people to receive support. But actually, many in our community won't reach out until much further into their journey with sight loss. I mean, there's an example of somebody who many years later, it might just be that something has happened in somebody's life, whether it's a deterioration in their sight, a change in circumstances at home, and actually they then feel ready. So we need to continue to have the conversation with people about the support available and not assume that maybe 10 years, 15 years, at any point in their journey, that they've already had this information or they've already chosen to engage. So we just need to keep checking in with people, I suppose, really. Denise, we're fortunate to be joined by a broad range of professionals today. How can the professionals benefit? Because we talked quite a lot about how those living with can benefit from accessing our services, but what about the professionals that are providing support? What can we do there?
Well, other than days like today, and we'd love to see you guys face to face. It's a great opportunity, but it's all of our services. We have a lot of professionals do contact our helpline, and we encourage it. If you've got a specific question about how to support someone, we've had calls from teachers, who are supporting somebody, and they just want to check in with something, sense check something. To just make sure that they're supporting in the best way. Any questions that you've got that are condition specific that you're just not 100% sure of, we're happy to try and answer if we can. Our information days, they are open to all of our professionals, colleagues. It's a lovely way of getting together and meeting sector partners in a local area, hearing from local speakers, and having a chance to engage with families. It's another way to get out there and talking to people without your normal hat on, if that makes sense. So it's a bit more relaxed because you're not on the spot. you know, we also have, as Paula said, you know, sort of the e-news and things like that, but we actually have a professionals e-bulletin that's specifically for you guys. It comes out a few times a year, and we try and share with you as much information as we can that we think will help you, be interested to you, and to support the families that you're supporting. So if you're not already signed up to that, please come and see us over at the stand and ask to sign up to that.
Sean, with the Only Up Genetics resource, it's really evident to us that the conversation isn't often happening with community from the medical professionals that they're seeing. I guess we don't really know why that is, whether it's not felt to be a relevant conversation or whether maybe they don't feel fully equipped to have the conversation. I don't know whether you have a view on why it might be and how useful the resource would be in that situation.
I think in Oxford we're really lucky that as a genetic counsellor I'm embedded into that clinic, but that's not the situation in most eye hospitals or most clinics that our patients are getting to see. So and you know, again in Oxford we have a number of consultants who are experts in genetics. If you're going to your local kind of hospital, then that expertise might not be as strong, or they might not feel as comfortable going through that information, as well as kind of the time restraints that kind of everyone in the NHS is under. So I guess it's really important that the professionals know that these resources are available. If they don't feel comfortable given that information, that they can signpost. And then, you know, within the Unlock Genetics website, there is a list of where kind of you can signpost people to specialist eye clinics. And so that then hopefully will open up those referrals to get people to the right place.
And again, not everybody needs to know it all. You just need to know where to signpost people to the information. Thank you. I think we've got time for some questions. So do pop your hand up if you've got questions for any of us, if you're in the room, or I think somebody will put any questions to us that are coming from online.
Hi, this is a question for Sian. I deal with patients and families sometimes who basically really don't want to go down the route of genetic counselling. I'm an ECLO working in an eye clinic, and whilst obviously it's not my job to convince them, how would you explain in very layman's terms to them what is genetic counselling, what are the benefits for them either now or in the future, and a really easy, friendly way of doing it so that they can at least go away and think about it in a really measured way?
Yeah, I think it's not uncommon for people to really kind of get their walls up as soon as you bring up genetic testing. You know, I think it's got some quite complex and historical kind of meanings behind it. And so genetic counsel, going to a genetic clinic and going to genetic counsel doesn't mean that you have to have genetic testing. A lot of people will come to us just to have that information given. So it's going somewhere where you're getting accurate information that is specific to that person. So everyone's going to be slightly different, and so it's really helpful to see a genetic counsellor so they can discuss your individual circumstances. There's no pressure from a genetic counsellor to have genetic testing, and there's absolutely no kind of, if you turn up, you can come as many times as you want before you make your mind up. I think the term genetic counselling can be quite intimidating for some people who don't feel that they need counselling. But it's just explaining that we're just there to provide information and to try and support them to make an informed choice that's right for them in their particular circumstance.
The mic's coming.
Hi, it's Devinder from RNB. Sian, you touched on a point there that I just wanted to you mentioned about the title of genetic counselling, and we know language is quite powerful. When that term was approached to me, I think it gives a lot of people the impression it's counselling. So I just wondered, has anyone thought about the barrier that people misunderstand the service? And is there scope to maybe think of maybe an alternative title so people may think it's genetic identification, or, you know, just because I think there is a barrier sometimes people think, is that for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think I don't know if there's been any work done on kind of the kind of mass opinion of that, but there definitely is, as people will come to see me, will say, oh, I don't need counselling. And it's one of the first things I'll do is explain that it's not counselling in any kind of therapeutic model. So I think it would be something important for us to think of in future in terms of how we access those people who are maybe put off by that title. There's lots of changes in the world of genetics, and the roles are changing a bit with the type of genetic testing that we're doing now. So there isn't anything that's changing at the moment, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that is a real benefit of talking to people on our helpline. If there's anybody who's not sure about it, a lot of people on our helpline have actually got first-hand experience of being through that. They can explain in very clear terms what it is and what it isn't, to just help put somebody's mind at rest. And obviously the Unlock Genetics information on the website it goes into a lot of detail. So hopefully that will help, you know, sort of in the meantime while people are deciding what it's going to be called.
And that's one of the reasons it's so important when we create new information resources that we do involve the community. So one of the things was, did they understand the language we were using? So we need to use the term genetic counselling because that's the one they're likely to hear at their medical appointments. If they do hear it, hopefully they do. But actually when they come to the site, we explain in lay language what that actually means. But it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because if they're hearing that language, is that a barrier, and how do we break that down? But we need to also be using it so people make the connection between the two things. Thank you. Have we got any more questions? I think we've perhaps got some questions from online.
Question to say, what is actually the best way to refer to Retina UK? What's the best channel to put people through to start with?
Anybody can email services@retinauk.org.uk and that'll come through. There's a number of the whole team, Matt, myself and Mark, all monitor that inbox. So somebody will be able to accept that referral and point it in the right direction.
And then Denise, can you just explain what would happen once you receive that referral?
Absolutely. So one of the team will actually make contact. We'll first of all go back to the person who's making the referral, if it's necessary, or thank you for it if you've given enough information. We will then make contact with the individual to make sure that we've got all the information we need to understand in a little bit more detail the ways that we can help, what their expectations are, what their individual situation is, and make sure that what is being referred into, because there may actually be more than one of our services that would benefit. So we can talk through the different things that are available and tailor the service to that individual.
Thank you. Got a couple more questions in the room, one at the front, one at the back. Thank you.
Hello, Debbie Malone speaking. It's for Sean. How would someone go about if they did want to have genetic counselling or, find out of whether it can be passed on to their children? How would they go about seeing someone like yourself?
So you'd be referred by your GP. Genetic counselling works in a couple of different ways. So I specifically work within the Oxford Eye Hospital. So in Oxford, we would receive referrals through the genetics clinic in the eye hospital, but that service isn't necessarily available across the UK. So some people would go through a clinical genetics department. So your best protocol is to go to your GP who would know what the services are available in your area. And like I mentioned on the Unlock Genetics website, there's a drop-down menu that then says about all the different services that are available. So you can just look up your area and it will say who to refer to. There's the GP or your consultant ophthalmologist, if they're not comfortable with doing genetic testing and genetic counselling, can refer to a specialist service like Oxford, Manchester, London.
I'm just taking my instructions from Matt. Are we taking one more question? Thank you.
Hi, it's Trish Wildy from Oldham again. Just wondering, when you said about we referring to yourselves and people ring, have you got information for referring on to local authorities and other support that is around for people who, again, as you say, may not be ready right now, but might, do you know what's in your area anyway, that when you're ready you can make contact yourself, maybe not have to go through us again or through Retina UK to make that can pass on information from you to individuals, how they can access support in their own area.
Sorry, can we pass on? Sorry, I didn't quite catch the beginning of the question.
At the end of it, I was wondering whether it made sense myself. So if somebody rings you for support and information,
Yeah.
have you the information that you can pass on to that person about what's available in their area, what's local, and how they can, what type of support they can access and how?
Depending on what it is, so when we have that initial conversation, we're very much about finding out what it is that they're looking for. We will try and follow that up. So there's a lot of information that perhaps might be given during that conversation. So we will always try and follow it up with an email, providing links or telephone numbers. We will look what's available in that person's local local area. So the local Sight Loss charity is a place that, they do great work, on the ground right there for the person. So that information is usually included in that email. And then we would encourage them to keep in touch with our helplines, because there may be things that they haven't thought of right now within that conversation that they need, they think of, 6 weeks down the line or anything, just to keep in touch with us. Come back to us if there's more that they're interested in, and we'll always try and find out the answers for them.
Thank you, Denise. I think we are now out of time, so hopefully that's given you an overview of how we work at Retina UK. The information and support service is available to both yourselves and those you support, and a bit of insight into the difference it can make if you do signpost on. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Bhavini, Sean, and